Well, here we are on February 13th for our Super Bowl Sunday preview. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we got 3 questions this month. First one came from Leela and Dale. Leela and I go way back, of course, and so does Dale and I, but she asked if this was my swan song, this book that just gotten done, which I've been working on since 2004. And, I'll make the answer straightforward and as simple as I possibly can. I was supposed to die when I was 53. That was 20 years ago. And starting a few months prior to this action, Baba kept asking me, Meher Baba, my master, kept asking me, do you want to live longer? You got so much, blah, blah, blah. And I says, I'll do whatever you want. But if you're asking me, for me, I just want to get the job done and get out, which has been my theme song since the day I was born. Anyway, and he changed my karma. He says, okay, just change your karma. Now you'll live to be an old man. And so the bottom line is that I'll be in this physical form as long as he wants me here. And, it's not my department. I really don't care. When this book is in print, I'm still in the physical form, I will, of course, edit the correspondence school and a number of other writing projects that are all potentials. But I'm not attached to it one way or the other. There's always stuff going on in life. Anyway, the second question came from Tilda. And I read the question. I guess maybe to give some context, I will. This is a long one. The Freedom Convoy, she's asking, I'm sure you've heard of the Freedom Convoy, protest to end all COVID restrictions and mandates imposed throughout Canada. This convoy began by truck drivers protesting the vaccine mandate imposed on them by the government in order for them to be able to cross the country borders. Hundreds of truckers drove to Ottawa, which is Canada's capital, about 3 weeks ago to protest this in front of Parliament. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister and family left to an undisclosed location and has not personally given any message or tried to negotiate with the protesters. I believe he thought that they'd protest for a few days, give up and go home due to no response. Very cold temperatures, lack of bathroom facilities, etc. But 3 weeks later, now there are more trucks as well as non-truck driver supporters. And it started with them wanting freedom to make their own choice to vaccinate, to now freedom from all mandates. Now there are drivers and other protesters at most border crossings. Saskatchewan, one of Canada's provinces, has lifted all mandates. Other provinces have not filled yet. This whole thing is disturbing many people and businesses. As I'm writing this to you, things may be changing. Who knows what happens next? I'm going into a lot of detail because of facts that most followers are not Canadian and are not aware of this. What does the astrological forecast say about this? I have 3 things to say before I go into the details. Astrologers are human beings. Even if they're brilliant astrologers, if they're not perfect in their understanding, their personality as human beings will bleed into what they read astrologically. I'm not immune to that. I have what I'd like to see happen, and it colors how I look at a chart. Sometimes to a greater and sometimes to a lesser extent, but nonetheless, it's always there. Number 2, I'm not by any means an expert on world phenomenon. I've been doing astrology for 50 years now, and sometimes I'm right about things and sometimes I'm wrong. This question, though, and the third thing here is that this question is shadowed by the fact that we live in a very belligerent time. Countries that are democratic, for the most part, are in an uproar where there's a group of people who think that being free means that you have a right to do whatever you want, whenever you want, regardless of what it means to anybody else. In other words, they're people who stand outside what we would call the social contract, and it's unfortunate. And you see people, we live in a time, as you know, great polarization. We talked in another session about the United States going through its Pluto return. And Pluto, for everybody in the whole world, is in Capricorn now. And it is a time of plowing the earth through all of these bureaucratic structures. And we see in China, the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and Russia, and in India, in some senses, we have democracy in name only. People say the word democracy because it sounds nice, but in China is a dictatorship. Russia is a dictatorship, and India is trying to be a dictatorship. And Nehru, the first prime minister of India, was adamant that India should be secular, meaning that no religion would hold sway over another. And Ravindra Modi is attempting to turn India into a Hindu theocracy, basically, which would be fine if the Lord Ram was incarnate and sitting in the prime minister's chair, but he isn't. So, we end up in this time where people in the West, particularly in Western Europe and in the United States and in Canada, other democratic countries, feel that they have a right to just do whatever they want, and that regardless of what its impact is. Now, I'm not a medicine person. It's like, yeah, I have a doctor, but he's a regular medical doctor, but an esoteric healer, and also, a Chinese acupuncturist and all kinds of other stuff. And I don't take medicine unless it's essential. I haven't had a vaccine since 76. But when the coronavirus hit and the vaccine became available, I got it as soon as I could. Not because I wanted personally to be, vaccinated. I guess I just saw it as a social responsibility. It's like, and anybody who doesn't they're wrong. It is their social responsibility. And if they're not going to do that, then they should just stay in complete isolation. I mean, if they have a medical reason for that. And again, democracy is messy. It's not an easy form of government. It just happens to be better than all the others. So we're going to talk about what's going on in Canada right now. Whenever you talk about a country, there's always many different charts for the country. But I'm going to share with you the chart of Canada, and we'll see if we can get this up here. And Canada is born, well, they're again going back to 1867, when the British discovered Newfoundland, and we have a chart for that, and we have a chart for many different iterations of Canada. But this is when Canada became, in 1867, actually the Dominion of Canada was born as an independent entity. And it's the chart that I'm not an expert. Other people may see it differently. And I haven't even had a chance to talk extensively with my Canadian astrology colleagues about this, but I believe that this is the chart for Canada. Now, here we got the Sun Uranus conjunct at the bottom of the chart, right on the fourth house cusp, which could show, a love of land, a love of family, home. But Uranus is the planet of genius. It's the planet of peculiarity, of anomalies, of uniqueness. Well, Uranus rules the 12th house, which is the unconscious, secret enemies, and so on. I'm saying that this idea of individual freedom running amok has been at the root of this current crisis. Now, I'm going to stop sharing and show you a different chart here. And you'll have to pardon me for a moment here. Okay. Now I'm going to share a different chart here, which is the chart of the, Canada that progressed to right now. Basically, I actually progressed it yesterday, but if you can see, well, this isn't even the chart that I wanted, excuse me. I'll be right back. I just need to get a different chart. I got it now. Okay, fine. So, I keep saying I'm going to get better at this, but I somehow still struggle with the technology stuff. Anyway, here is the chart for Canada progressed to yesterday. Well, it wouldn't have moved on a day in the progressed map, but it's kind of interesting. The progressed chart has the moon applying to the semi-square of the ascendant. The progressed moon is here, 22 degrees Aquarius, coming down, on the natal ascendant here. Now it's interesting because excuse me, it's the moon to the midheaven, the semi-squares to the midheaven. And what makes this interesting is that the moon is the public and the midheaven is the government. And the attention between the two is going to build for another month. I can say that, again, with the moon in Aquarius, that sense of freedom is very, very strong. Now, in the chart of Canada's birth, I find that this fascinating. The moon is void of course, which is the public, which means that it is hard for the country to be cohesive and for all of the parts to work together. With the ascendant in Aries with Neptune and Venus in sextile to the ascendant in Neptune, Canadians always manage to get by, to create harmony, because there's tremendous idealism. And Venus here rules the seventh house, which in a national chart means foreign countries, shows that Canada basically has a skill for getting along with other countries. Now, with the progressed Venus in the chart coming to the opposition of the moon, I can say that this, if we listen to the news today, it sounds like that this is basically winding down, is over. But the astrology would suggest that we've got another round to go here of confusion and difficulties. And it will take probably a while longer. Let me say another month before the pieces finally settle down. They will. They ultimately will. Canada's a strong country, and the will to survive as a nation state is powerful, and the people are doing their part to pull together. There is this strong faction, and it isn't just in Canada. Obviously, it's as I say, it's in the United States, it's in the UK and in France, most verbally, where they have this protest against the vaccine mandates, against taking the vaccine, or the government telling people what they can do and what they can't do. But if we're going to have a government, we have to have some sense of regulation, some sense, some restrictions on human behavior. Just like if you get in your automobile and you're driving 100 miles an hour through a school zone, everybody would, pretty much agree that that's nuts. And then you get pulled over and the policeman says, you're driving drunk. Okay, we have laws for a reason, because if we had no laws, and everybody did whatever their impulses said at the moment, we wouldn't have a society. We wouldn't have any commerce or stable family life or anything. So rules correctly applied and agreed upon are good. But what happens when people protest? Well, people protest because they feel that what they value is not being heard. And we live with that, of course, globally right now. With Saturn, the Lord of karma, the Lord of rules, in Aquarius, we're in a time of reconstituting the way that the legal structures operate globally. That's going on. Anyway, I just wanted to say, I don't see that if the Canadians were left to their own devices, this would be worked out quickly. As Tilda had said, and when she was asking the question, why didn't she implicitly was saying, why didn't the prime minister interact with the protesters? Well, I like to think in my own mind, if I was the prime minister, that's what I would have done. I would have gone down saying, look at all you guys, what's your complaint? Let's see if we can work this out. But when the day is done, you can't cross out of the country driving a truck into a foreign country without proof of vaccination. Okay, that's a rule. You don't like it? Well, you have a right to vote. You can elect somebody that thinks like you do. And that's the, sort of the simple-minded way of looking at it. But if it wasn't for the fact that we live in this instant news cycle, and where people get involved in other people's business all the time, the truckers at the border started a GoFundMe site and raised $10 million to help support their strike at the border in Windsor, and like 90% of that money came from the United States. Right wing groups that support um, the truckers, like Rand Paul said he hopes that this truck drivers strike clogs up and makes life miserable in all the American cities. Well, if you're spiritually minded, it's probably not very good to think ill of other people and to wish pain on anybody. Truck drivers, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, anybody. It's better to clean out your mind, clean out your heart, and just think well of them. And at the same time, have a point of view, something that you believe is a better principle, and to take a stand on it. Now, again, I said my piece on this. I do not see the truckers' strike in Canada as being a big deal unto itself. And I do believe if it was left to its own devices, the Canadians would work it out in a fairly short period of time. It amastetizes, though. It's like a cancer, and it spreads to where that is a ripe sentiment amongst other countries. So what is terrorism? People who think differently than the government turn to terror when they no longer believe that they can convince the majority of the people of their point of view, but they're passionate that they're right and everybody else is wrong. And so this is the answer. Anyway, so we're going to move on here, and let me see. Okay, this question comes from Judy Feitek. Do you see astrological indicators that suggest the outcome of the Russia-Ukraine situation? Well, again, I'm going to talk about the astrology in as much detail as I can here in a minute. But I got to tell you, honestly, I've been to the Ukraine, love the country. I think the people are wonderful. I would hate to see it gobbled up by the Soviet Union. Again, I realized that Meher Baba's women Mandali were with him in a city where they were on tour, and the women pointed to these dogs that were in cages and said to Baba, "Why don't you do something?" And Baba says, "Don't you think I know what I'm doing?" It's like God has the responsibility for creation in his hands and for all the creatures in creation. What do we know? Of course, we have preferences. I would like to see, I would like to see Russia not invade the Ukraine. If Russia does invade the Ukraine, I would like to see Russia beaten, and that they surrendered. But again, what do I, as a human being, those are my prejudices, those are my feelings. I tend to, whenever there's a tyrant attacking democracy, whenever a strong country attacks a weak country, of course, I root for the underdog anyway. Now, I'm going to take just a second to switch charts here, and then I'm going to share with you something. Let me see. Again, with Ukraine, there's a number of charts that could be used. And I'm sharing this particular chart with you, which is the of ones that could be used, I believe is the most valid. This is a chart set up for December 1st, 1991. This, if you remember, in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. Basically, the Soviet Union was destroyed. You know, it happened in layers over a number of years' time, but it was in December 1st of 1991 that Ukraine was declared a free country, and they participated in voting with other former Soviet bloc countries. It was about a week after this, for the dissolution of the Soviet Union. By the way, Gorbachev, the man who was responsible for bringing the dismemberment of the Soviet Union about, when he ran for re-election, he only got 2% of the vote in the country. Why? It's in the Russian character and has remained so, to like having a strong autocratic leader. Now, I have many Russian friends, and when I was communicating with them at the time that Russia was invading Georgia, they were only exposed to news sources that showed that Russia was completely in the right and that Georgia was criminal. It was what you and I would look at as a hatchet job. But who's to say that, that even though we supposedly live in a land of free press, that we were getting good data? We have opinions, we look at stuff. Now, what do we have here with Ukraine? The Ukraine, the chart that I have is for 6 p.m. Now, what is fascinating about this chart is that we have a retrograde Mercury, Sun, and Mars all in Sagittarius, all and in the 6th house. The 6th house is sign of repetition. Sagittarius is a sign of, the archer looking out in faraway places and such. It's a sign of adventure. Mars conjuncts the Sun, showing, that a strong pioneering spirit. And, the north node of the moon, which is the Dharma for the country, is conjunct the descendant and is conjunct Uranus and Neptune. All of these planets here, right on the 7th house cusp, which in a nation's chart is foreign countries, right? These are trine Jupiter, which is at the bottom of the chart, the end of matters, the home country, the land. This would indicate an outside role for both Saturn, which rules all of this, North Node, Uranus, and Neptune, and Mercury, which rules the 4th house cusp in Jupiter. By the way, Jupiter in trine to any one of these placements, Neptune, Uranus, or the North Node, would be a very favorable position. So this is a very favorable chart. Now, what do we want to make out of the progressed? The progressed positions are around the outside of the wheel. The progressed Sun is in the progressed chart is conjunct the North Node of the Moon, but it's coming to the natal North Node of the Moon, and it's within a degree, and it's coming to the 7th house cusp. So you might ask yourself, uh, uh, how is this going to, which was asked by Judy, how is this going to end? Well, I'm saying things look well for the Ukraine to come through this. The progressed moon in the progressed chart is just crossed over Pluto 2 months ago, and is in the going to the fifth house right here, in showing what they create. So what is the plan here? You might ask yourself, what in the world was Putin thinking? Well, again, here, remember the seventh house is ruled by Saturn natally. Saturn's in the eighth house. Eighth house is banks, insurance, the money that supports the common good. It's the supply of money from foreign countries that support the Ukrainian government moving forward. Now, does that mean that they're, a free state that's being subverted by, outside influence? No. What it means is that they found a role in the larger colony of nations industrially, in terms of their manufacturing, raw materials, and industry, and that is the symbiosis financially is wonderful. Now again, the wealth of a nation is ruled by the second house, which is the same as the first house in this case. The moon is natally is conjunct Venus. The moon separating from Jupiter and going next to Venus, very, very positive symbol. And in the progress chart with Venus coming to the conjunction of the sixth house, this is, also, positive influence, energizing the common people to be able to do the work. Now, Mars in the progress chart is conjuncting Mercury, which is to say that I would anticipate that this means that the mind of the common person in the Ukraine today is fired up, is ready to go to battle with Russia. Means that the mindset is, again, Mars is past exact, but it'll be in easy distance of this natal Mercury for another a year. So what I would suggest is that if Russia invades the Ukraine, that they will lose, that Russia will absorb tremendous loss. Now, the ascendant, which is the body politic in a sense for the country, is opposite this natal Saturn, which shows that if the war comes, it'll be an immense financial strain on Ukraine. However, if war doesn't come, it's still a financial strain. Now, we can't talk about this meaningfully without looking at one other chart, which is the chart of Vladimir Putin, because nothing happens in Russia without his explicit approval. Even Xi, and the head of the Communist Party in China, doesn't have the latitude to completely get things done the way that Putin does. And he won the last election by, he gets like 72% of the vote. And in the majority of Russians, especially the young Russians, really like him. They think he's doing a great job. But it's worthwhile taking a look at his chart because people have varying opinions on him. I mean, I know personally American astrologers that think he's a great guy, which, makes no sense to me at all. But, we live in not just a country of where you have free speech, but a country where we have the freedom of the press, and people are exposed to all kinds of things. And I think that that is what makes America great. What I don't like with the country now is that 2/3 of the Republican Party thinks that the Democrats stole the last general election. That to me was very troubling. That we'd have so many people involved in what would you say, conspiracy theory thinking. Anyway, yeah, I guess it's no secret, that and I've said it in my newsletter and in past things. You gotta love this guy, Donald Trump. I mean, he represents. You can't think of advice, that Americans have other than drinking and smoking that Donald Trump doesn't have. He's a child molester, a philanderer, he's a pathological liar. He represents everything that you would look at and say, God, that's really disgusting. But yet there's a lot of people who have, signed up and follow him in this blind cult, the same way that a number of people follow Putin. Now, Putin, again, in the KGB, it was against the law to share personal information outside of the confines of the KGB. So who knows? I've done the best that I could to track down his true birth date and time. There is another chart circulating for 2 years earlier. For his birthday is, I'm pretty certain, is October 7th, and I'm pretty sure it's 1952. But there are some people that say it was 1950. Standard time, I think, was 9:30 in the morning. So he is a Libran with Moon in Gemini and Scorpio rising. Now, what is interesting, Librans are noted for their diplomacy. They're wanting to get along with everybody. And, I'm sure he and Donald Trump got along fine because they both lie through their teeth. And he enjoys it. Now, Pluto, Lord of the underworld, ruler of his ascendant, is conjunct the midheaven on the south node of the moon, and is in sextile to Mercury in the 12th house here. Now, Mercury is also conjunct Neptune and loosely to Saturn as well. So we get all of these planets ruling the 12th house, which is the spiritual path, behind the scenes dealing. Now, whether the person's Genghis Khan, Abraham Lincoln, Donald Trump, Jawaharlal Nehru, you don't become a political leader without having karma with lots of people. So something gets worked out through the leader of a country for the whole country, even if you dislike the person that happens to be in that spot. And, you know, obviously Putin has lots of contact with the Russian people, a lot of history with them. His family, his parents were basically upper working class folk in the factory teacher segment of the population, grew up in government housing, but he rose pretty rapidly in government. And again, Sun in Libra, Moon in Gemini, knows exactly how to get along with people when they want to. And with the North Node of the Moon in Aquarius, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, all trine the North Node of the Moon, right on the third, fourth house cusp there, he's pulling for the country to go in a new direction, positive direction. And you have to ask, of course, with Pluto on the south node of the moon and Leo on the midheaven, he is, like Donald Trump, expressing many narcissistic tendencies. And with his progressed sun here, 23 Sagittarius 36, it's just inching past the trine to Pluto. So chances are he's in what's called the balsamic moon phase, meaning he's going toward a progressed new moon. This is usually not a very favorable time to start on some grand adventure. So other than the fact that he has very low regard for Joe Biden and assumes that he's a pushover, and that he's predictable and can take advantage of him, you know, and the hubris is overwhelming that comes from him these days. If you remember where the transiting planets are right now, Jupiter is in his fourth house cusp, but Saturn is coming toward it. And if he invades the Ukraine, I believe that will be his undoing, meaning that even if he wins, he will lose something, because Saturn coming to the fourth house cusp, if this is a correct chart, shows that he will be going in to a new cycle, and that he's in a more obscured position right now. So what do we have aspect-wise that are going on between the natal and progressed chart? Other than, you know, we have the sun separating from the trine to Pluto, and separating from the sextile of Mercury, there isn't much going on. So I think it is fair to say that he maybe has gotten what he wanted, at least partially. Obviously, Putin has a legitimate fear that Ukraine, which, by the way, most Russians see Ukraine as part of Russia. I was talking to a number of Russian friends a few years back, and we were talking about the situation. And they say, well, Ukraine doesn't even exist as a country. You know, it's really part of Russia. And it's really implanted in them. And there is that sort of glow or glaze over, you know, sort of a Russian empire, reconstituting the former Soviet Union, but with the subservient states, all ruled by a dictator that is basically in Moscow's pocket. Now, it is unlikely that this will end well for anybody. But if you remember the planetary placements for this year, if you go back to my January newsletter, I talked about how in the fall, Uranus and Saturn come very close to their conjunction, square, but they don't actually complete the square. But, September, October, November, cliffhangers, and we come out of it in November. And it is the dictatorial cycle. And I was saying, well, that pattern breaks up just before the midterm elections here in the United States. And it can be that things ease up a good deal for people who still have faith in democracy. We'll see. As I have said to you time and again, this is a very trying time. There is a new world being born, and the pressure of this new world being born is horrendous. And we're in those, the sort of like the labor pains right now. So we're not out, no matter what happens, we're not out of the woods. What it feels like, if you just put your finger to the wind, it feels like Russia's definitely going to invade Ukraine. The astrology of it, to me, suggests something else. Putin is not, even though he's operating under a lot of preconceptions, he's a smart man, and he's very intuitive, and it's a blind spot. He's misread the Ukrainian situation many times in the past. When he gobbled up Crimea and the breakaway provinces in the east in Ukraine back in 2014, everybody, that wasn't too involved politically could say, oh God, look what he did. But people who were really in the know realized he made a huge miscalculation in terms of the Ukrainian people and in terms of what their identity is about. So that's, the backdrop of saying, if he attacks the Ukraine, every grandmother, every child care worker, every janitor in the high school is likely to take up a gun and stand on the front line. So even though he may be able to slaughter the entire country, he won't do it. So I think that it is likely that cooler heads will prevail. My common sense doesn't say that. It's just the astrology of the situation suggests that to me. Now, these two big questions over the truck drivers' strike in Canada and Russia, on the border with Ukraine, they're big questions. And I don't think that they have an easy solution in the world of things. In the realm of looking at astrological symbolism, it looks like the dissipation over the next month of the strike in Canada. And it looks like this thing with Ukraine will drag on for quite a while. I don't think, with Uranus, transiting Uranus and Taurus right now, that that is likely to, be a bolt of lightning out of the blue that sets everything right. If there's a lightning strike, it'll be bad news, not good news. That's my assessment. The other thing is with Neptune in Pisces right now, and Jupiter in Pisces, and later on, in a week and a half, when the sun goes into Pisces, we're going to have about as much psychic energy in the inner world of energy than that we've seen in a long time. And, that will go on until the end of April. In May, the energy changes. But my point is, what you think about, what you feel, what you send out to others, it has an effect. It's not just for you. Obviously, this is a time of great spiritual awakening. You can lighten your own burden, but not by donating great money to great causes or, like going out and volunteering at a lot of places. This is all fine. I'm not opposed to it. But I'm saying what you can do is purify your own heart, purify your own thinking. Try to think well of everybody and everything. Uplift your spirit, because that is the message of the time. The last time that Neptune was in Pisces was right after the planet was discovered, which was a time of great, it was a time of people becoming very interested in non-material things. The psychic, seances, the spiritualist church, all of that took off when Neptune went into Pisces last go round. It was right after it was discovered. That's why it was so important. And so interest in the connection that we all have with each other, the inner effect that we have in each other is very important. And there is so much negativity, so much, it's so easy to become depressed, so easy to think, oh my God, what can you do? It's like, hey, you can do something, and what you think about matters, what you do matters. And to feel powerless is wrong. As the love grows during this time period, we will see a great transformation on the planet. But you know what? That's not what's important. What's important is not that society changes. It's not that Russia or China or Crimea or Canada or the United States does the right thing. What's important is that you do the right thing. Each one of us is responsible. Each one of us is God in hiding. It's time to do what we can to get rid of the camouflage, to get that love, that unity of spirit connected back to the cosmos, back where it belongs. Anyway, I know I've kept everybody muted through this, but it's because the background noise would just be chilling. And if you have questions about anything that we talked about or should have talked about today, email me and I will get back to you. I love doing whatever I can for you. And as long as I'm on the planet, I plan on having this monthly talk and doing my monthly newsletter. Other than that, very little obligations other than, I exist to see my clients. And even if I were to die sometime soon, I can promise I will not leave anybody that's relied on me in the lurch. And I've taken everything into consideration for a paced, well-timed departure. And so until we meet again, everybody, you take care. Bye now. Jai Baba.